Thank you again, Mike and Henry, for that wonderful introduction. Well, getting right into it, I wanted to share with you some of the thoughts that I've had as we've been having this conversation about digital transformation over the last several years. And the question that I actually asked myself, and maybe you're asking yourselves as well, is this really what we're still talking about? Transformation is something that's been in the consciousness for probably about 5 years now. And to some extent, I think Liferay have entered the conversation a little bit later. I remember back in 2011, 2012, there was a lot of kind of interest in what transformation would mean for government and local government here in the UK. And some of those conversations have become more difficult. For those of you who are in the business world, maybe it's been sort of a high and lofty goal for you. And now that we've actually been on this road for a while, we found that it's a little bit harder than we thought that it was. I was trying to find a good analogy for what our experience might have been like. And one of the most obvious ones came to mind, that to the extent that we all thought that digital technology, along with our own heroic efforts coming together, would save the day and take our companies into a glorious future, we thought maybe we would experience something along the lines of this. Might be a little bit scary, but a little bit fun. But our day-to-day reality is a little bit more like this. I recently saw a chiropractor and was kind of amused, delighted, and it was kind of neat to see that he himself is going through a digital transformation process. He's got the entire patient intake form online, and so I can fill this all out on his website, don't have to sit on his office, and that's a real e-signature there, so that's pretty cool, right? So a lot of us probably are going through the same thing. Liferay, you guys talk about transformation, and that's great. We're still back here. We're still trying to sort things out. And this morning, I want to say that that's okay. I think it's almost more healthy for us to think of this now as an evolutionary process. The targets are moving. Sometimes we don't know exactly what direction we need to go. We do know that, as Mike mentioned, as Henry mentioned, the ultimate goal is to improve the experience of our customers, to get better at delivering to them what they want. But there are a lot of moving parts. What is it that your customers want? Sometimes we don't exactly know that, and we have different ways of figuring that out, whether it's a button at the airport or a survey that you fill out online. As an aside, I've always secretly wondered if you could wire that button at Heathrow Airport back to the actual immigration officers. And depending on how your experience was, it would deliver a little shock. But anyway, I digress. So this idea of evolution also came out in the context of my own experience talking to customers, which went something like this often. So we might meet at a conference and they'll say, hey, Bryan, nice to meet you. We love your product. We've been using it for a while now. I first heard about Liferay through Gartner or through a colleague of mine in the industry. And it sounded pretty cool, so I went to your website, kind of poked around, couldn't quite really figure out what you guys do. And so I talked to more people and realized, oh, you guys are really good at building customer portals and intranets and doing a lot of integration stuff. Which, of course, is very humbling for me. I've headed up the marketing effort here at Liferay for a while, and I found that there's quite a disconnect, again, between this thing that we're talking about, transformation, the digital experience platform market, and the actual thing that our customer needs right now, which is most often something very pragmatic. Again, a customer portal or a website or a new intranet initiative. And what I realize is that although this goal seems very difficult to achieve, a lot of times those things that we're doing now, the portals and the intranets, these are the first steps in that evolution toward achieving that goal. One of the customers who has shared that journey with us recently in Austin is a company called Spire. They are an energy company of about 1.7 million customers in the US. They were the result of a series of acquisitions by the Liferay Group of Missouri Gas and Alabama Gas Corporation. And in a way, it looks like what they did, which was to have a simple self-service portal to pay bills online and get statements, is just your run-of-the-mill portal project. But it comes in the context of this very significant and very challenging business event, which was the merger, really, of 4 very large and separate companies into a single entity. As part of this, they underwent a huge rebranding effort. They went from being the Liferay Group to becoming Spire Energy. They wanted to reimagine themselves not just as a natural gas company, but as a provider of energy solutions. Now, that's all fine and good from the business's perspective, but if you are a customer of Alabama Gas Company or Missouri Gas Company, and all of a sudden, all of the signs and things of the people visiting your home to start and stop your service are different, that's going to be a little bit unsettling. And so I want to share a little bit of what they did on the business side in conjunction with improving the customer experience on the self-service side.
Hi, I'm Alicia. I've been with Alagasco for 10 years, and helping people is what I do. Going above and beyond, that's just the norm around here. And now we're going to do that on a whole new level. Connecting with us just got a lot easier. With our new mobile-friendly website, you can manage your account on the go. We're going to keep doing what we've always done, serving you, only better. And now that sounds a lot like this. Hi, this is Alicia with Spire. How are you today? Alagasco is becoming Spire.
So what I thought was neat about this story is that part of what they wanted to convey to their customers was, look, we're the same company, we've changed our logos, we've got a new identity, but we're the same people that you've been working with for the last 8, 9, or 10 years before when we were Alabama Gas Company and so forth. And I thought that they did a pretty good job of conveying that through really sort of downplaying the branding change, which was really subtle in this commercial, and really talking about the continuity. Now, how do you achieve that on a customer experience side in your digital channels? Using Liferay, Spire built a new customer experience through a self-service portal. Obviously works on web and mobile and all that. But the important thing is that regardless, if you were a customer of any one of the 4 entities before the acquisitions, your experience would still be seamless. They had to do a lot of heavy lifting to make this happen. Everything from connecting SAP systems for customer information for Alabama Gas Co. versus, let's say, SAP or Oracle for some of the other companies. Of course, they had to make sure that all of that plumbing was in place so that when people click on Pay My Bill on the front end, all of that was executing seamlessly on the backside. And so when Liferay talks about digital operations, when we talk about having a platform that lets you evolve for the future, which really goes beyond just that surface level experience, this is what we're talking about. Here's another example of a company going through an evolution with the Liferay platform. Of course, you all know the brand Coach. They are a global brand, well known throughout the world, including here in Europe. And I just actually had a collection of some of their really stunning display visual merchandising here. And their story of transformation begins with something really basic, which was a paper and postal mail-based process for executing these window displays. So basically, every month or so, when they had a new design to be shared out across 1,000 retail locations throughout the world, they would send by post the new design for the window. They would have all of the retail store workers actually execute these things, take photos and whatnot, and basically send all that stuff back to corporate for compliance. Now, Even those of us who are the furthest behind in our digital transformation can recognize that that is a labor-intensive process that really probably makes it very difficult not only to be agile in those changes, but also, quite frankly, prevents you from having any kind of meaningful dialogue or collaboration. And so what Coach did was they started with their new intranet, their new employee intranet, which essentially digitized this process. So right off the bat, they were already saving about $500,000 in postage costs alone. But more importantly, this really set the stage for further evolution of their organization. Now field offices could, or retail stores could kind of show corporate, well, this is how we actually took your design and implemented it. We actually think it works a little bit better in this situation. They could actually send that feedback back to corporate, adjustments could be made and agreed upon, and things were much, much more dynamic than they were before. But because they built it on Liferay, this also really set the foundation so that in the future, as they continue to evolve their intranet into something much wider and deeper than it is currently, they can think about things like developing new applications to enable employees to collaborate further. They are building in some insights and analytics into their solution as well. And they are continuing to decentralize document and content management. So again, these are all steps that they're taking on this path to transformation, but they're not trying to do it all at once. So that's good news on the one hand. Maybe the paths that we were already on for several years are the right way to go. And as long as we're making steady progress, we can feel like transformation is going to happen one day. Now, on the other hand, and this might seem like a contradiction, I want to remind us that we can't lose our sense of urgency. We are in a competitive environment. We are in an age where upstarts of all kinds are disrupting industries. We are in an age where our relevance to the customer changes week by week and sometimes day by day. So don't lose your sense of urgency. Now, where does that come from? Well, if you are Paul Chapman, the CIO of Gap Incorporated, that's really easy because the urgency really has come from the total and utter disruption of the retail experience, certainly in the United States, but around the world. I know that here in the UK, a large part of the conversation is about how to continue to invest in our high streets and make sure that our local businesses still get a lot of foot traffic and get sort of that village experience that's so common and wonderful about London. But the reality is, if you're Gap or if you're any other major retailer, you're facing a lot of disruption. This is just showing how much is changing in that landscape. Some of the biggest brands in the US, like Payless and JCPenney, closing hundreds, if not thousands of stores across the United States. And as a counterpoint to this, I actually saw my first Amazon brick and mortar location where when I was placing my order, they said that I could actually get it a day earlier if I decided to go pick it up at the physical location close to my home. And so things are really being turned upside down, and this is just going to happen more and more. The other thing to keep in mind is that when it comes to technology, whether it's the cloud, whether it's DevOps that you've been hearing about for some time, whether it's the Internet of Things and chatbots, which are kind of coming up on the horizon, you probably don't have as much time as you think. One of the analysts at Forrester, Brian Hopkins, talks about how there's a false sense of complacency we can get because of the nature of technological disruption. Most technology functions on this exponential curve, and yet experientially, what we go through is that we're seeing these technologies in the early stages when it seems like the pace of change is something manageable. And so the company is thinking, well, we've probably got a few more years to figure this out. And then by the time the real change comes, we're already far behind. One of the things that we try to do here at Liferay, one of our missions, is to sort out technology, to figure out how it's going to be useful to you, and then make it much easier for you to consume. And so when you look at some of the items on our roadmap, everything from a cloud deployment environment to commerce and analytics, a lot of this is us trying to distill the essence of that technology in its most useful forms and make it consumable for you and your organizations. Urgency can also come from unexpected places. And the idea I want to share here is that sometimes your competitors are not who you thought they were. I doubt that most of us would consider a platform like Facebook Messenger to be a direct competitor of PayPal. And yet, when you look at emerging markets like Southeast Asia and China, you see this interesting phenomenon that a lot of people in those countries, they might use WhatsApp, they might use Line, they might use WeChat. There's a number of these very popular messaging platforms that have risen up in the last 5 years. And rather than simply using that for personal communication, people are using this for all of their day-to-day interactions. So in China, for example, the WeChat platform, which again is like WhatsApp, allows you to not only chat with your friends, it allows you to make micropayments. And I actually did this on the streets of Shanghai. I was buying some dumplings, some pan-fried dumplings, and the street vendor had a little QR code set up in her booth, and I could just simply scan that QR code and pay her the 30 renminbi or whatever it was for those dumplings. It was a completely cashless transaction. It was all digital, and it blew my mind. And so a lot of people in these markets now, they see something they like on Instagram, they're able to instantly send a message to that person's Messenger app handle and then complete the transaction within that interface. And so you see a lot of the ground shifting under the feet of established players like even PayPal, Venmo in the United States, where the things that you thought that you had control over, you may not have as tight of control as you thought. Let's look at another dichotomy. So Amazon and Apple, two of the biggest and most important technology companies, but we usually think of them in very separate spheres. Apple is kind of the provider of all my hardware and my mobile experience. Amazon is where I go to get the best prices and really that customer information about products I want to buy. Well, you've probably all heard about Alexa. You've probably all thought that it was kind of a neat technology. Probably thought, I don't want to be talking to a machine all day at home, or maybe you do. Actually, a friend of mine whose father lives alone in New York does talk to Alexa fairly often. But, you know, so it's kind of this nice idea in the corner. We're not really thinking about how it integrates into our personal lives, let alone our business. And yet, Chris Messina, who is a writer who comments on technology and the Valley, had the insight to say that Alexa is much more than just a convenient way to order things online. It really is trying to very slowly and subtly replace the way that we think about how to interact with all of the ecosystem of services we engage with online. In other words, if right now we are accustomed to doing a lot of this on our phones, we are going to very quickly move to having that interaction through Alexa, which of course means through the Amazon ecosystem, which is now in direct competition with Apple. And so where are the unlikely places that your competition is coming from? I think this is the question that you need to be asking yourself and something that you need to be very aware of. Finally, all of these are sort of negative external forces that are kind of forcing the sense of urgency on you. But I want to suggest that the best and healthiest and ultimately most fruitful way you can continue to have that sense of urgency is to know and understand your customers. And Jeff Bezos has a great quote that really gives you a picture into the way that he thinks about his business. And the basic idea is that all of us as consumers are inherently and perpetually dissatisfied. And I love the Liferay ecosystem. I love our customers. But I think it's also true of you. These events, Mike McCauley mentioned this is our 5th anniversary. I remember the first year, people were just excited that we were having anything at all here in the UK. And through the years, you know, Eddie and his team, they had like wine and chocolate tastings. They had, I think we had some live entertainment one year. Of course, there's the accessibility that people love about this event. People have always said it's so great that we can talk to the Liferay founders and all the Liferay staff, and you guys are really approachable. Well, guess what? In this 5th event in 2017, those of you who have been here before, it's like, well, of course, that's the way Liferay is going to be. That's always the way that they've been. So that's just kind of par for the course. What else do you guys have for us this year? And so there's this tremendous pressure, and I'm sure that many of you would actually not say this to us directly because you're not even actually aware of it. But it's just a subconscious thing that all of us go through where the more that the companies we do business with deliver on our expectations, the higher those expectations get. And if we can see this not as sort of a perpetual treadmill or a Sisyphean sort of task that can never be overcome, but rather, as long as your customers still care, as long as you guys keep coming, and some of you have that sort of 20% or 30 or 40% of inherent dissatisfaction, and you let us know what that is, and we can rise to the occasion and improve on that, then we're going to keep the conversation going, right? And we're going to continue to have this business to run in providing value to you. The moment you start thinking, well, oh, Liferay, that's great. I'm going to put them in this corner here. This is what's really important to me now. Then we've kind of lost that battle. And so for us here at Liferay, as well as for all of you, customer obsession, really understanding even those things that your customers don't yet realize about themselves is really key to staying on top and staying competitive. So how do we bring these two things together? Evolution as sort of a comfortable and step-by-step path toward transformation, and this feeling that as we're going there, we have all of these forces nipping at our heels. I want to bring it together by saying that if you really want to make real transformation happen, one of the two most important things is to take this evolutionary approach. Because the reality is, a lot of us don't actually know exactly where we're going. We just know that we need to get there quickly. And it's kind of like asking directions in a foreign country. I do this a lot. I speak a little bit of Japanese, and I can form and ask questions better than I can understand the response. And so I will say, you know, I'm trying to find this bookstore. Can you point me to it? And they will say, blah, 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 blah. They will, you know, make a lot of hand gestures. They'll kind of say, oh, you got to go straight down this way, make a right or something. I say, okay, great. I only understood 10% of what you said, but I know I need to go this way. And I head down that road, I turn right, and once I start feeling a little bit lost, I ask someone else. And they say, oh, well, yeah, okay, you need to go a little bit further here, down on the left, past the pharmacy. Okay, so I can make it to the pharmacy, and then what's next, right? And that's really what we have to do. We've talked a lot about agile in the industry, probably for the last 8 years or so. And it's really been kind of about resource management. It's about let's not do waterfall and all this stuff. But at the core, I think one of the key principles behind agile is that we don't know what the end goal is necessarily. But we do know that if we get something out in the market and we get that feedback, we can course correct much easier than we would have otherwise. Again, bringing Paul Chapman from Gap back into the conversation. Gap is a very large organization. They had an almost paralyzing culture of sort of consensus building and getting permission and getting everyone on board. And so at some point, as the CIO, Paul decided that he had to time box decision making. 48 hours to reach a decision on something and just start moving. And he backed this up, of course, operationally, having all the right DevOps processes in place so that software would be developed more quickly. And thirdly, he said that it was really important for them to put the emphasis on products, not projects, because products have consumers. They have end users who are essentially customers. And so this really ensured that they weren't doing things like our data warehousing project or our SAP integration project, but it was really a product, whether it was order fulfillment for the back-end fulfillment guys, or it was digitally enhanced retail experiences for the retail stores and so forth. And similarly, Mary Ransom from Bloomingdale's, who is the GM of their e-commerce, said that one of the most essential ways of figuring out where you need to go is to look at data. Data, of course, is something that you can't, well, you can and you will argue about it, but it starts the foundation of the argument and make sure that that argument is started in reality. All of you probably have large ambitions when it comes to data. Again, probably just starting in that journey. And at Liferay, we want to help you with that as well. I want to close by just talking a little bit, sharing about Liferay's experience in transformation and some of the things that we've had to do. So you'll hear about We Deploy here at this conference. I want to put it in proper context. And also share with you what our experience has been. About 4 years ago, some of our front-end developers who had been with Liferay for a long time grew to be quite frustrated with some of the organizational things at Liferay, some of the engineering processes, but also to some degree with the extent to which we were a very traditional Java, back-end oriented product company. We have all seen the rise in the last 5 years of front-end development, all of the cool stuff that's being done on Node and Angular, and mobile as well. Some of our customers, in fact, and some of our integrators are actually now intentionally front-ending Liferay with some of these technologies because of the way that it allows them to develop things much more quickly. And so these developers at Liferay, they wanted to fix that problem. They wanted to find new ways of developing software that didn't have some of the drawbacks or limitations that they were experiencing. Well, that sort of personal project eventually became something much bigger. As they were trying to solve these things, they started looking at things like Amazon Web Services, they started looking at Heroku and Firebase, and they started to not like what they were seeing there as well. And some of the reasons for that were that these technologies were, let's say, 12 months old. I think there was some point at which I think the IBM Cloud Platform was using a technology that had been developed 12 months ago, and so it was limited in features compared to what was now being made available on Azure and Google Cloud. They saw that Firebase solved this one problem of cloud-based database management, but the way that it interacted with Amazon and some of these other services was very siloed. And so as they were starting to try to solve this problem of front-end development, they began to tackle this much, much bigger problem of cloud deployment and management and automation. And as part of the management team, we started to see this thing growing here on the side, which was kind of off on its own. We didn't have a lot of visibility into it. We weren't really sure where it was going or if the investment was going to pay off. And it all made us quite nervous, to be frank. We had long conversations about it, and then we decided, you know what? We are now, 11, 12 years old. We've operationalized a lot of things. Maybe we can see the ways that their frustrations are truly borne out on the more enterprise side of the house. Let's actually let them do their thing. We're not going to peer too much over their shoulder. We're going to trust that they are internally motivated. We're going to trust that they care so much about solving this problem that they're going to do it. And again, this was sort of a 3 to 4 year process, and we've come out on the other end of it, and now we've got this really interesting product that we're bringing online over the next 6 months called WeDeploy. We believe that it's a great, innovative new platform for deploying web applications to the cloud. But we're also at a point right now as an organization where we still haven't figured out how is WeDeploy going to map with our existing enterprise business. What is our relationship to the open source community? What do we expect that community to be able to do on the platform and so forth? There are a lot of questions that are still unanswered. But the reality is that if we had tried to plan this thing, if we had been really too much involved in that process as a larger organization, I think it probably would have had a very high chance of failure. And so I want to stand here today and tell you that although this was a huge risk for us and we had a lot of reservations about it, ultimately allowing them to develop to sort of have that freedom was really enabling for them, and we're very, very happy with the results. Finally, I said that there were two things that makes real transformation happen. One is sort of the way that you bring that urgency together with evolutionary mindset. The second, I think, is really the people and the culture. And this is something that I think about a lot as a leader of Liferay, about how the different kinds of people that you have in an organization are going to determine the how of getting to real transformation. We may not know where we want to go, and we may not know, what the customer wants may be something that changes very, very frequently. But I think what can't change and what shouldn't change is what your commitment is to how you want to go on that journey. And I think we intrinsically know this. When we look at different leaders, political leaders in the world, and we think about how they're going to lead us to a certain destination, their approach is going to be very different who they are. This is also true in the business world, where your perspective of your impression of how Bill Gates led Microsoft might be very different from the way that Ellen Kullman led DuPont during her 6-year tenure. And so I think underlying all of this talk about transformation, I think what you need to find, or what you need to hold on to if you're already very certain of it, is the culture and how you want to lead your people on this path. I think we all saw a really terrible example of leadership earlier this year. I think you remember what happened with the passenger that was dragged off of a United flight when United wanted to take some of their crew on that flight in place of the actual customers. I remember the CEO's response was kind of panned in the media as being tone deaf. And I actually followed this issue for a while, partly because this is something that I would never want to happen at Liferay, but also because I fly United a lot, and I think it's really interesting how you can have such a different experience, for example, on Virgin versus United. And in some ways, I think maybe the United CEO's response was not even something that he had control over. This is an organization that over many, many years became so rigid in its operations because they were being fined for late departures from the gate because they were always trying to accommodate all of these different flight changes. In the US, there are always these seasons where you get hurricanes and thunderstorms in one part of the country, snowstorms in the Northeast and so forth. And so when you are trying to build an organization that delivers this customer experience, getting people from point A to point B, but you're dealing with all of these operational challenges on the other side, I can totally see how you can end up where United ended up earlier this year, where, does this passenger get another whole can of Coke versus just a cupful is something that they've written a handbook about. And so this is something that, I hope that Liferay never gets into, but your organizations as well. You never want to be in that place where you've lost touch with your customers to that degree. But on the other hand, I don't know if you had a chance to stop by the Liferay booth out there that has the handmade bags this year. This is, I gotta say that I was just so proud to be part of Liferay when I heard about what the UK team did this year for this event, because here are the things that I know that I might have influenced in some small part as a leader over the years. I told my events team, I hate that these events always have all of this junk that gets given away, and most of it is useless. Most of it gets thrown away. It's low quality stuff. I don't ever want to do that as an organization. And then on the other hand, in a very sort of abstract way, we've talked about the vision of Liferay, and we've set up our volunteering program, and we've said, you guys should take time off, find a charity you like, and help them out. So I kind of just made these little nudges and pushes in the culture of the company over the years. And this year, Mike Sylvia and the team here in the UK, they went on an EVP with an organization called The Vineyard here in Greater London. They help homeless people, and they engage them with craft. And so they've actually made these reusable bags out of recycled fabric. And we've also engaged with them to provide that as the giveaway for this year's event. And I was just like, my mind was blown that our team was able to bring together so many of those things, the way that we run our business, our values as a company, and the experience for all of you. And so with that, we just wanted to end with a little video that shows our team's experience that we want to share with you as well.
The Vineyard Community Centre is based just off Richmond Hill in a leafy suburb of Greater London. Beautiful place to work and live. In the centre, we run 5 projects. We run the morning drop-in, mostly for those in crisis. We run an afternoon cafe, open to all for lunch. Excellent coffee, home-baked cakes. We run the food bank out of the Vineyard Cafe twice a week. We run a charity shop 5 days a week, and we run a skills development program, Works of Love, which enables people to grow in confidence, learn a skill, and hopefully get back into the workplace. How it comes together here at the Vineyard as a community hub is that we see from one spectrum of society participating and to the other side of society participating. And so here at the centre, there's much need that gets met, solutions provided, and that's really by those that give their time and service, and also the donations that come from those who have resource, those that have a generous gift to give. And I believe that's the colourfulness of community coming together for one purpose, and that is to make this community a better place to live for all involved.
Well, the Vineyard's a saviour. It is a lifeline for people that are on the street. We won't get a cup of tea in the morning if this wasn't here. We wouldn't get something to eat in the morning if this wasn't here. So coming here, it keeps you warm, keeps you safe, and the best thing of all, you can eat and you can drink and you meet a load more people that are in exactly the same place as you are. Coming here, they teach you respect, they teach you value what you are, at the end of the day, which is a human being. which we don't get on the streets. We don't get nothing like that. So when you can come into a place that is loving, they're caring, you know, if they can help you in some way, they help you. If they can give you extra food, they give you extra food. If they can help you in that way, they do. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Any volunteer that comes, and sometimes they're supported volunteers, we value them as part of the Vineyard community family. We value them particularly as they get involved with us socially, with those that we're trying to help socially, and we find that the rewards that go back to those volunteers in that activity are also rewards that come to us. We're building community here in all its aspects, and corporate volunteering is part of that building community. We value it enormously. An example of corporate volunteering with 3 different participants is when a retail bank gave us the ideas and the research for something. It developed into a sewing project, which is supported by the Pret Foundation, the branch of the Pret-a-Manger chain, and now a local company, Liferay, are commissioning bags to be sewn for their national conference. An example of great creativity between all 3 corporates, and it's working really well for us.
For me, the really important thing about what happens in this place is that people are helped to find a way back to where they came from, to get back on their feet, to support them while they're having a little wobble or having a little difficulty in their lives. And the people here are just, you know, really wonderful in giving that to them. And the fact that we could be just a little part of that was a very rewarding experience for us.
I think personally, since the first time I served here, this time I got out of the cafe, I was just like, first I thought I was very, very tired. I'll repeat that, but that's true. I was just shattered because I was standing the entire day. I felt really good, just, you know, serving people coffee, learning to make good coffee, and yeah, just good feeling. I just couldn't wait to come next day.
Volunteering is important, because without volunteers, this place will never run. This place will never be open, this place will never exist. And for homeless people, it's the most important thing in the world.
I think you guys all noticed while Sylvia was doing all the hard work, Mike was just kind of moving some shirts from one rack to the other, kind of smiling at the camera as he was doing that. It's been really great seeing the fruit of Mike, Sylvia, and the team's work here in the UK. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that I have a chance to speak with many of you. I'm really excited to see you all again, and I hope you have a great conference.